Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen and media. Welcome to our post-cabinet brief for today, October 19th, 2018. The brief today will be given by the Minister of State, the Honorable Joseph Harmon. Mr. Harmon.
Thank you, sir. Archer. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the media. And I say a good morning also and welcome to several persons who are visiting Guyana right now. As you know, Guyana is host to two major conferences over this weekend. The PISLM, which is a Partnership Initiative for Sustainable Land Management. And we have several ministers of government from the region and other officials. And then we have the Commonwealth Association of Public Administration Management. Several ministers and other officials from all across the Commonwealth are here and will be here over the weekend, as well as the Green Guyana Expo, the officials which are there. So I want to welcome all of you to our dear land of Guyana. Ladies and gentlemen, the post-cabinet press brief covers matters which were dealt with at cabinet at its meeting on Tuesday, 16th of October, 2018. Firstly, it will be recalled that Section 11.1 of the Small Business Act of 2004 provides for at least 20% of the procurement of goods and services required annually by the government being obtained from small businesses, and that the Small Business Council, which oversees the Small Business Bureau, shall facilitate this by preparing a small business procurement program. Cabinet has therefore approved the implementation of the Small Business Procurement Program for implementation by the Ministry of Business by January 1st, 2019. In this regard, it was agreed that there will be a basic set-aside measure for all government procurement, that is goods, services, and works, up to $30 million. B, is set aside for subcontracting measures for all government procurement between 30 million and 200 million Guyana dollars. And that C, all ministries, agencies, and regional authorities will participate in the implementation of the program. Specifically, the ministries, agencies, and regional authorities will be required to provide annually projections of the value of small business procurement by sectors based on their annual procurement plans to the Small Business Bureau. Secondly, to implement the set-aside measures approved. And thirdly, provide quarterly report on procurement payments to the Small Business Bureau. This program will ensure that small businesses have their fair access to government procurement opportunities through a transparent and efficient process, and will also enhance the economic impact of public spending. Cabinet received the annual reports of the Ministry of Social Protection for agencies under its purview for the years 2015 and 2016. The reports provided information on the functions, organizational structures, and staffing of the respective agencies, along with their set targets, targets achieved, and the reason for the success or failure during the reporting period. Cabinet approved the reports and directed that they be laid in the National Assembly as is required by law. The audited report and financial statements of the Guyana Water Incorporated for 2016 was submitted for Cabinet's approval. Cabinet approved the report and directed that it be laid in the National Assembly as is required by law. The Honorable Minister of Finance submitted to Cabinet the external loan agreement executed by the Government of Guyana and the Islamic Development Bank for the sum of $20 million United States dollars to finance the Guyana Power and Light Power Utility Program. Cabinet approved the loan agreement and directed that it be laid in the National Assembly in accordance with Section 3(6) of the External Loans Act, Chapter 7408 of the Laws of Guyana. Proposed regulations relating to wildlife management and conservation that were drafted by the Guyana Wildlife Conservation and Management Commission were presented to Cabinet for consideration and approval as follows. The draft Wildlife Conservation Management and Sustainable Use Regulation. These regulations are made in accordance with Section 83(1)(a) of the Wildlife Conservation and Management Act of 2016 and will replace the Wildlife Management and Conservation Regulations of 2013. The new regulations will govern all aspects of hunting, trapping, trade, protection, conservation, management, and sustainable use of wildlife in Guyana. Specifically, the new regulations will provide a legal framework for conservation and management of all species of wildlife in Guyana. Conservation, preservation, management, and protection of Guyana's biodiversity, and licensing and decisions which support the principles of transparency and justice in the management and conservation of wildlife in Guyana. That was the first regulation. The second regulation, the draft Zoo Administration and Management Regulations. These regulations will provide a legal framework governing the establishment, operation, and management of zoos in Guyana in accordance with Section 83(1)(e) of the Wildlife Conservation Management Act of 2016. And thirdly, the draft Wildlife Holding Premises Regulations. These regulations, in keeping with Section 83(1)(b) of the Wildlife Conservation and Management Act of 2016, will provide a legal framework to govern and regulate the design, management, and operation of wildlife holding premises across Guyana. The objective of these regulations are to provide the minimum operating standards for the design, operation, and management of wildlife holding premises, and secondly, to create supportive mechanisms that are cognizant of the national goals for wildlife conservation and management. Cabinet granted its approval to the proposed three sets of regulation and directed that they be gazetted to be brought into effect. Cabinet has approved the appointment of Her Excellency Mrs. Robian E. Smith as the representative of the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization to Guyana. The appointment of Mrs. Smith is expected to foster the further development and promotion of sustainable approaches to food and agriculture policies in Guyana in keeping with our national development priorities. Cabinet gave its consent for attendance at the coordination meeting and workshop on the use of nuclear techniques in marine environment for small island developing states from November 4th to the 9th, 2018 in Cienfuegos, Cuba. This meeting will focus on the potential use and integration of the techniques of the International Atomic Energy Agency in the marine environment in relation to such phenomena as ocean acidification, harmful algae blooms, and marine pollution. Attendance at this meeting will provide the opportunity for Guyana to strengthen its capacity in marine pollution management. Mr. Michael Hardin, Environmental Officer 1 of the Environmental Protection Agency, will attend the meeting. Cabinet approved attendance at the second meeting of the Conference of the Parties to the Minamata Convention on Mercury, COP2, from November 19 to 23rd in Geneva, Switzerland. This meeting will build on efforts of the first Conference of the Parties, COP1, and will play an important role in furthering the implementation of the convention. Guyana's delegation to this meeting will be led by the Minister of Natural Resources, the Honorable Raphael Trotman, and will include Mrs. Marcia Charles, Technical Officer of the Ministry of Natural Resources, and Mr. Nicholas Fredericks, Chairman of the National Tushaus Council. Cabinet noted the award of contracts by procurement agencies as follows: for the provision of consultancy services for design and supervision for the construction of regional administration building at Linden, Region Number 10, the Ministry of Communities, contract in the sum of $41,300,000 awarded to SRK Engineering and Associates Limited. For the construction of an operating theater, public hospital study compound, Essequibo Coast, Region Number 2, Ministry of Communities, for the sum of $40,943,000, contract award to Builders Hardware and General Supplies. For the supply and delivery of medical equipment, the Ministry of Public Health, for the sum of $117,979,000, contract awarded to New GPC Inc. For the rehabilitation of the Esplanade, New Amsterdam Landfill, Region Number 6, Ministry of Communities, for the sum of $26,501,000, the contract awarded to Advanced Environmental Solutions. For the supply and delivery of one new international garbage truck, Ministry of Communities, the contract in the sum of $45,074,000, contract awarded to Industrial Supply of Guyana, Inc. For the supply and delivery of stationary supplies, Guyana Georgetown Public Hospital Corporation, for selected items in the sum of $27,158,000, contract award to Massey Technologies Guyana Limited. And B, for selected items in the sum of $44,659,000, contract award to Andrew Enterprises. Ladies and gentlemen, those are the matters which were dealt with at Cabinet, and I'm now prepared to take your questions.
Yes, the small business procurement program. Could you say if maybe the head, who's going to be heading it, or the Ministry of Business will have to now advertise for that post?
No, there's already in the Ministry of Business an entity that is dealing with this matter. What is going to happen though is that the small businesses, in order to benefit from this facility, will have to register with the Business Bureau. And so that they can actually, the Bureau will be able to make the checks and so on to ensure that these businesses actually benefit from the facility.
Any update on the revisit or nothing?
Well, the information I have from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is that there was communication with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs indicating that Prime Minister Modi will no longer be visiting at that time, and they gave the explanation that domestic circumstances preclude him from making the visit again at this point in time. That was the explanation that was given.
Minister Gildari Kaito News. There's a consultancy for 41.3 to SRK, and is this the same administration building where they seem to have a problem with a contract being advanced and never delivered?
This is which one of the consultancies? That I just read out?
Yes.
SRKN?
Yes, sir.
Okay, this is a consultancy for design and supervision for the construction of the regional administration building at Linden. This is design and construction, design and supervision, that is. So we're still at the early phases of this contract.
Any questions outside?
Yes.
What is the position? I know that the Minister Patterson would have updated the country on the Berbice Bridge. What is the position now? Have you been updated with the latest position on that?
Well, I can say to you that Minister Patterson raised this matter at Cabinet at its meeting on Tuesday about the unreasonable increases which were proposed by the Berbice Bridge company. That Minister Patterson briefed Cabinet, and Cabinet gave some very clear guidance to the minister on this matter. First of all, Cabinet guided him that these increases were unconscionable and was going to pose an undue burden on the people of this country. And it is to note that it is not only the Berbice people that are affected, because people from all parts of Guyana travel to Berbice, travel to Suriname, and therefore all of us are affected by these increases. And so Cabinet gave the minister the clear indication that he was to address this matter. One, that we are not prepared to accept that increase. And secondly, that the minister was to seek a legal opinion as to what were the next steps in the event that they still proceed to at least to wanting to do that. The government also, the Cabinet also gave the minister some certain other options which we are prepared to exercise in the event that the Berbice Bridge Company were to seek to unilaterally and arbitrarily impose those increases. However, we believe that better sense will prevail since there is a legal requirement for there to be any fee increase on the use of the bridge. So basically what Minister Patterson said to the public is the position which is the government's position, and there's been no further information on this matter as far as I'm aware since Tuesday.
Just one other question. In today's newspapers, based on the tabling of the Auditor General report, is an indication that some drugs were stored at a hotel up the East Coast. While you were in opposition, Minister, you had vowed to stamp out these weaknesses in the system with procurement, especially with drugs and so on. How does it happen that we have in the new administration these things are happening?
Well, that is something that that came to my attention also this morning when I opened the daily newspapers, and certainly it's a matter which the Minister of Public Health would be in a position to provide some explanation for that decision, which was made. I think the Minister will probably address that matter in a short space of time. But certainly I am not in a position right now to address it. It wasn't dealt with at Cabinet, and so I do not have a view which I can say that Cabinet has taken this particular view on the matter. But you're aware that Cabinet had given certain directions with respect to the termination of a contract for the Sussex Street bond, and that termination, the ministry did in fact take action on it and did terminate the contract. So I know for sure with respect to that issue that this action was taken by the Ministry of Public Health. I'm also aware that the Ministry of Public Health, they're in the process of renovating a bond and also in the process of building a new one, so that there are issues, there are things that are taking place in the ministry with respect to the storage of pharmaceuticals, but specifically on that matter, I cannot give you any further information now.
Minister, in Lusignan prison recently, we had 3 prisoners escaping from that facility there, and then there was an unrest. But you say this issue came up at Cabinet, and what's Cabinet position, given that there were previous recommendations from the previous unrest and fires?
Well, yes, the matter was dealt with at Cabinet, and the Cabinet was given an update on the matter by the Minister of Public Security. Cabinet noted that there were 2 sets of issues where this was concerned. Cabinet noted also that there were 3 prisoners that had escaped, and I read not too long ago that one of them was recaptured, and I'm sure that the Guyana Police Force will be taking every step to ensure that the other 2, that they're also recaptured very, very shortly. But there were 2 sets of issues, one which was of an operational nature, and that had to do with the reasons why these incidents were occurring, and these were reasons which, in fact, interviews with the prisoners actually brought out. The question of the meals, the question of accommodation, question of water, and sanitary facilities. These are operational issues which are well within the parameters of the Director of Prisons. And the Director of Prisons was given some clear directions to ensure that those matters were addressed. I believe sometime on Tuesday or Wednesday, I saw a photograph where the Director was actually tasting the meals that the prisoners were eating, and they seemed to have been comfortable with that. But we did express our concern that the domestic, those issues which are operational in nature must be addressed by the Director of Prisons and his officers. And also the fact that the officers should, on a regular basis, interact with those prisoners who are there to find out whether, in fact, there are issues which are brewing. And so we instructed that that also be done. And secondly, the first, as I said, was at an operational level. The second was, of course, the strategic level, which required higher levels of intervention. We'll recall that only recently, because of the damage which was done to the Georgetown prison, that the Lusignan prison had to be strengthened to facilitate the holding of a larger number of prisoners in that facility. This strengthening, of course, is really a temporary measure. And so, in addition to the strengthening of the physical strengthening of the prisons, what we did was to increase the level of supervision by the security personnel, including Guyana Police Force ranks, including also monitoring electronically of the facilities in there. I believe the Minister of Public Security would have given an indication of some of the breakdown which took place on that particular night, and they were human in nature. People falling to sleep and so on. So that these are matters which we have addressed. We have increased the levels of security. We have a fresh look at the technical facilities which are in place, in addition to which we are actually fast-tracking the development and the building of the Mazruni prison and the holding facility which is being built here in Georgetown. Vice President Ramjitan will have given you the process or the procedures which are taking place in those matters. So those are the levels, as I said, at the operational level and at the strategic level. Additionally, the minister has been asked to convene a special team of officers and technical persons who have an understanding of the prison system and so on, to convene a team of such persons to meet with him, and I believe the meeting is set for 1 or 2 o'clock today, to advise on further steps that are to be taken. Additionally, it will be noted that the prisons at Lusignan and Timeri were temporary holding facilities and were not built as strong prisons. They are temporary holding facilities, and therefore, really to add to the numbers which you had at Lusignan after the jailbreak and the burning down of the Camp Street prison, it has put further pressure on the system. So we are looking at these things, and we want to give the assurance to the Guyanese public that the security forces have taken the necessary measures to guarantee that, that these breakouts, that they are minimized, the facilities or the efforts to break out are minimized, and that any attempt to break out will be dealt with right there on the premises before it becomes a threat to the security of citizens of this country.
Minister, the president has been traveling around the country highlighting the importance of local government action and expressing to persons to vote out persons who are not competent to
Perform.
respective communities. A lot has been coming out of the City Hall COI. I want to know, has Cabinet discussed or had any concerns about what is happening at City Hall and its governance?
Well, of course, we are not deaf to what is taking place. At this post-cabinet press conference, one of the earlier ones, I indicated that while we recognize that local democracy, local government elections brought into place the management of the city, that because of the strategic nature of where the city is at the seat of government, that the government could not be oblivious to things that are taking place there. So yes, we are recognizing the matters which are coming out of the COI, but as you know, the COI is still a matter that is ongoing, and that while you may be expressing concerns about what is coming out, it is the recommendations which come out of that COI that the government will have to take action on. As I said, yes, we are concerned with some of what I see coming out in the newspapers and in the reports coming out from the COI, but certainly we will have to await the completion of it, the recommendations of the commissioner, before we can take action. These, the terms of reference of some of these commissions of inquiry permit the commissioner, if they find that it is in the interest, it's in the public interest, they can in fact make preliminary recommendations if they find that actions need to be taken even before the COI has completed its work. But so we have no such recommendations as such, so we may have to await the findings of Justice Kennard and what his commission determines in this matter.
Minister Harmon, on the issue of COI, could you say if the Lindo Creek COI report for the surface at the level of cabinet yet?
No, it has not been dealt with at the level of cabinet, but as I said on the last occasion, that the specific agencies that that had responsibility for action to be taken, that those agencies were sent copies of the report with recommendations and with requirement for them to take action. You see, there are, some security matters are dealt with at the level of the National Security Committee. And at that committee, the report was in fact dealt with, and the entities that are required to take action, they were so informed.
And Minister, on a more personal level, there's been a report that the president has removed you from dealing with oil and gas matters and have informed companies that you're no longer responsible. How do you respond to that? And persons
I'm surprised that
stripped of responsibility.
I'm surprised that the author of that piece of mischief didn't come here this morning, because I gave him a full explanation yesterday, and I was looking to see him publish that explanation, but he's chose not to. Of course, to the rescue came the Department of Public Information, and they did in fact put out a full explanation of this matter. And for your benefit, I can repeat it. Because right here at one of our press conferences, and I think I gave him the date of my press conference, I indicated that from the 1st of August 2018, a Department of Energy will be established, and that department will be personally overseen by His Excellency the President. Personally overseen. The important thing about this is that when you establish a new department, it is important to ensure that that department is given the scope and ability to grow. So while the publication has been made that all of these entities are under my remit, it is a remit for reporting in the National Assembly. It is not a remit to run these departments, because these departments have their own head. It's like the department, the EPA, the Department of Environment, just like the Department of Energy. These are all strong, independent departments, and therefore they do not require day-to-day management or supervision of a minister. So it was important, in fact, that we understand that. And so His Excellency instructed me very early, and I told Mr. Chibral this as well, to inform not only the oil companies, and he's singling this out. I said to him yesterday, we inform banks, we inform international institutions, we inform foreign countries and so on. Because some people feel if they don't see a minister and they're asked to deal with a director, they feel as if they're slighted, as if you're shunting them down to another level. And so it was important to reinforce the importance of this department. So it was nothing about, I'm happy that you all are concerned about the amount of work which I have to do. But I can certainly say that this had nothing to do with anything about taking away, because it is the way in which government functions, and it is important that people understand that. And do not put things out there for which, if you had a good registry in your newspaper, that you will just need to refer back to statements from the Minister of State on Energy, and you'll see a whole list of these things coming up. So please inform my dear friend who is not here today that I still expect that he will put the information which I gave to him yesterday morning in his newspaper and have it properly circulated. And if that is not done, of course, you have it here today so that the public can know.
Just have one other question. Sir, the issue of Soku. We had two cases recently. One in which it was I think the dismissal was it the GVDI matter, and there was another one that they would have lost because of wrongful charges. Are you in any way concerned that the government's drive to bring to justice, or at least have some clarity on what would have transpired in the past, is not gaining any traction or not successful? Yet we're spending millions of dollars?
Well, it is a matter that came up at the level of cabinet. What I can say to you is that the SOCO is, of course, a recent creation, which was done shortly before we came into office in 2015. And it was a response to a requirement under the anti-money laundering and countering the financing of terrorism as one of the compliance requirements for Guyana. So the entity was set up, but without the necessary capacity to be able to do the work for which it was set up. And so over the last 2 years or more, what we have been doing is building capacity in that entity. It is also to be remembered that SOCO is a part of the Guyana Police Force. And therefore, while it may have a focus on specific crime, it is part of the Guyana Police Force. It is headed by an Assistant Commissioner of Police. And so what we're seeing here is there are some specialized functions that are performed by SOCO, and what we're looking at is the wider relationship of prosecutions in the Guyana Police Force. I believe that it is putting a lot of pressure on that entity when you see the number of cases that they have to investigate and then take people to court on these said matters. But I understand and I know that there's some additional training that is taking place. You have seen in the public domain and in the newspaper and television recently some training programs run by the British consultant, Mr. Sam Sitlington, and there are several other training programs which they now benefit from, which is improving and increasing the capacity of SOCO to be able to investigate and to prosecute. I believe this is where the entity is being unfairly targeted, because for a small body like that, only recently established, investigating matters and then having to take these matters to court, there are two separate issues here where this is concerned. And so I think they're doing a fair job at investigating, but it is what you do with that information when you investigate and how you get it over into the courts. Of course, we've also had some challenges with some of the quality of judgments as I see it when I read them in the newspapers. The way how some people are getting off on technicalities and so on. But I believe some of these decisions will be tested at higher courts, and that is basically the direction in which the government is going. So I want to thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for your attendance here this morning, and I trust that you have a wonderful weekend. Thank you very much.